2 concern the retirement system for judges. And this is an example of what is in the other sections. So judges who receive a benefit have the option to elect to receive the benefit either biweekly or monthly. Right now it's only monthly. The election for biweekly or monthly benefit payment would be effective not later than 60 days from the date of the election. If you do not make an election, you continue to receive your benefits on a monthly basis, and you can change the election on a form and in a manner prescribed by the board. Then Section 3 does a similar thing in CAPERS for a retirement, gives the option to retirants under CAPERS. Section 4 does the same under KPNF for a member of that plan. And the bill, if adopted, would take effect on July 1st of 2025.
Committee, are there any questions on HB 2130? Seeing none, you may continue, Jason.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On to House Bill 2129. This bill transfers teachers from the CAPERS 3 cash balance plan to the CAPERS 2 plan, and also defines teachers for purposes of CAPERS. Section 1 is a new section of law that provides that any teacher who is first employed by a participating employer on or after July 1st of 2025 will be a member of the CAPERS 2 system. And on January 1st of 2026, all active and inactive teacher members enrolled in CAPERS 3 shall have their membership transferred to CAPERS 2. There's also a definition of teacher in that section. Any professional employee who is required to hold a certificate to teach in any school district and any teacher or instructor in any technical college or community college. And then Section 2 amends part of the CAPERS Act, specifically the CAPERS 2 Act, the CAPERS 3 Act, to remove teachers from that section so that they can be under Section 1 that I just described. This bill would also take effect on July 1st if adopted.
Committee, are there any questions on HB 2129? I have one quick one here, and this may be for Alan, if you can't answer it. This is teachers only, so this wouldn't be support staff, paras, janitors, lunch ladies, lunch support, anything like that, right? Therapists, just teachers.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is the definition of teacher is the key there. Again, that's a professional employee who's required to hold a certificate to teach in any school district and any teacher or instructor in any technical college or community college. That's the definition that's used.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that some school counselors teach maybe lessons about social, emotional, that sort of thing. I'm a little confused about whether or not school counselors would be included.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I have a good answer. I have the definition there, and there'd be some nuance that we'd have to work through about whether they meet the definition by holding a certificate to teach.
It sounds like the certificate is the key on that. The certificate.
It seems to me that's a critical word, yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none, you may continue, Jason.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. The final bill, House Bill 2086, adjusts the CAPERS 3 dividend interest credit by lowering the dividend interest credit threshold to 5% and increases the dividend share to 80%. You'll see the statute amended there as KSA 74-49, 306. That's the CAPERS 3 members annuity savings account. It adjusts the return threshold for the dividend interest credit calculation from 6% to 5%. And increases the dividend share from 75% to 80%. And then Section 2 makes the same change in another statute pertaining to the CAPERS 3 members retirement annuity account. So the same change in both sections related to CAPERS 3, 6% to 5% and 75% to 80%. And this would also take effect on July 1st if adopted.
Thank you, Jason. Committee, do we have any questions on HB 2086? Seeing none, thank you so much, Jason. Next up, we're going to call Alan Conroy, Executive Director with CAPERS. Alan will kind of follow the same routine that Jason did there. So we'll start with 2130, and then he'll pause for questions, and we'll go on to the next one. So, Alan, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly glad to be here, and particularly for the new members. CAPERS, we usually just give information on the bills, and you all get to set the policy, whether or not you want to make the changes, of course, but we provide additional background to help you make an informed decision, particularly on the actuarial costs that we have access to from our actuaries. The House Bill 2130, as Jason certainly explained well, just allows for members to the option to change from the monthly retirement benefit payment. So right now, all KPERS retirees, regular KPERS, state, local school, judges, KPNF, they always receive their retirement benefit on the last working day of each month. And so this would give then those members the option to take that benefit. It doesn't change the dollar amount, just allows them to receive it biweekly rather than monthly. Since that money then would go out quicker than once a month, there is an actuarial cost to that because, again, those benefits would be paid quicker. And so then there's some cost to that. And of course, since it's an optional thing, on page 2 of my testimony, you can just see we've done some estimates. If 50% choose biweekly payments, 75 and 100%. And just so, for example, if 50% would opt in to make that choice, that actuarial liability would be about $29 million. And if all would opt in, it'd be about $54 million. And of course, the increase in the unfunded actuarial liability could be paid off up front, or it could be paid off over time. And given the size of the unfunded liability, this magnitude, that for those increases in the unfunded actual liability, in the example there, it's 0.05% on the employer contribution, but so that translates into about $3.2 million in the current year. And we've provided an attachment that just lays out the cost for state, school, local, KPNF, and judges based on the different options. On the administrative costs, of course, right now, even on the monthly, we get anywhere between 500 and 1,000 sort of issues that arise with each monthly payment. People change banks and they forget to tell us. They change accounts and they forget to tell us. Or the bank may do something with the account. There's something that triggers it and it gets bounced back to us for a variety of reasons. And usually then it just, then we work to, of course, get it to the right account number. And that's certainly doable, just takes sort of labor intensive to work through those. Of course, we'd have to upgrade our IT system, and the cost there about $800,000, and then some additional staff members to work with. We anticipate then if you do it every 2 weeks, then those number of bounce backs would increase over time. Maybe just stop at that point.
Committee, do we have any questions for Alan on 2130? Coach?
Mr. Chair, thank you for being here. If 50% did it, you said it'd be a cost of $29 million. Is that $29 million a year?
No, that'd go to that unfunded actuarial liability. So that part would just be a one-time cost.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mindy, any further questions? Alan, I have one on this. How many folks receive their benefits via paper check right now?
Out of the roughly 116,000, we have about 500 that we changed quite a number of years ago, and now all new retirees have to take it electronically. But when we made that switch, we sort of grandfathered those people in, and there's 500 roughly that still get a paper check.
So we wouldn't incur a huge postage cost to having to send biweekly versus monthly. No. Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions? All right, Alan, you may continue. 2129.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2129, as Jason explained, would move the KPERS 3 members that are licensed or teachers and would move them to KPERS 3. And you may remember or may know, just of course, KPERS 1 and KPERS 2 is the traditional defined benefit plan, final average salary times years of service times a multiplier. KPERS 3 is a cash balance plan, still technically by the IRS, still a defined benefit plan, but it has a different model in terms of making those calculations. There, the benefits based on the member still contributes 6% as they do in 1, 2, and 3. The employer contributions are the same as in 1, 2, and 3. But in the KPERS 3, each member has a notational account. It's still really, the money's still in the big trust fund, but then we track this notational account ultimately for retirement purposes. So those members, 6% contributions go in it. The employer, they're called pay credits, anywhere from 3 to 6% based on the years of service of the member. And then they get interest crediting on the upside, and they're guaranteed at least 4%. And then there's a multiplier. I'm sorry, I'm confusing bills. Sorry, but there is a guaranteed 4% on that. At a minimum 4% up to 6%. On the interest crediting for the members. This bill then would take all the certified teachers in KPERS 3 and roll them back to KPERS 2. And so those members now would be under the traditional KPERS 2 defined benefit plan. And of course, it's very individually based, whether it's KPERS 2 or KPERS 3 in terms of what their salary is, what they paid in, what's the interest crediting. All those can be very situational. We've given you some examples here on page 2. This just assumes a 30-year teacher who retires at age 60. Their KPERS 2 benefit would be about $45,000. KPERS 3, if they only got the 4% interest, the guaranteed interest credit would be $26,000. Plus the 2% dividend, then it gets to 36 as well. And so the difference there is 18,000 versus 8,000. But again, it can yield lots of different scenarios. And we've got some examples in terms of whether it's a career employee, you know, so worked 30 years and then 10 years and 20 years mid-career, 20 years late career, all have an impact on ultimately the retirement benefit. Generally, KPERS 2 provides a higher benefit than KPERS 3. And so, again, it depends on when they come, how long they stay, and when they leave. And there's a replacement ratio graph on the last page that just kind of lays those out. In terms of the actuarial cost, of course, moving all those people, KPERS 3 has been in place since 2015, so 10 years. Even just the teachers, moving those back, there would be that actuarial cost, that lump sum, the impact of the unfunded liability would be $220 million. And again, that could be write a check for it, so it doesn't increase the unfunded liability. You could have a one-time, or you could pay for it over 20 years, and that'd be about $18 million annually, about 0.3% on the member contribution to KPERS. The normal cost then going forward, so for that point going forward then, it's about 0.4% on the employer contribution, about $25 million based on the current information that we have, the payroll and so forth. And so on the back of page 4, you can just see the total actuarial contribution, assuming the unfunded liability is not paid off at one time, it would increase that employer contribution rate by 0.73%. And we just point out that on the administrative costs, we estimate that of the current KPERS 3 members, about 19,000 of the KPERS school members would qualify under that definition that Jason pointed out in terms of being a certified teacher. And so, of course, we'd have to do some update and some staffing then to provide for the transition and education of moving people back to 3 and from 3 back to 2, I'm sorry, and updating the IT system and staffing then to help that. The current timeline might be a little bit tight, and so there's just a note there that if this bill starts moving forward, there might be some consideration to maybe giving us just a little more time on the implementation side. But there is the calculation or the note that we'd calculate it both ways for the member who might retire during this sort of window time, whether their 3 benefit is higher or KPERS 2. certainly doable. It just changes, rolls these people back from Capers 3 back to Capers 2, and it's just a subgroup of certified teachers. I might stop at that.
Committee, do we have any questions on HB 2129? Representative Neely.
So does this, it's not retroactive as far as what they have already invested in Capers 3 would go to Capers 2. It doesn't change the investment of what's already there, does it?
Well, it does, in effect, make them like they were Capers 2 members
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
Okay.
Again, with that safety valve check, there might be a few circumstances where Capers 3 might be higher if they would retire at a certain time, and we'd check to see, what's better for the member 3 or a 2 retirement.
Alan, I just want to follow up on that. Just a scenario and how this would work. Let's say this passed today, became law. We have somebody that's currently a para, and they're in Capers 3. They stay in Capers 3 because this is only for certified teachers. 5, 6, 7 years down the road, they get their teaching certificate. Now they're eligible for Capers 2. Do they go back in Capers 2 with all that retroactivity in the Capers 2, or how would that mechanism work?
A good question, and Jason may be able to help. I'm thinking that it would just be from that point forward, because they wouldn't meet the definition of a teacher until they got that certification, and so it'd just be going forward. But Jason may
So they would have
a different thought.
So theoretically, they would have a Capers 3 and a Capers 2 at the same time.
That's correct. So when they got ready to retire, in effect, we do 2 calculations, and they'd. Yep.
And do we have that set up for anybody else in Capers?
There were a few examples. Sometimes, that maybe they've crossed retirement systems. They may get a police and fire retirement system benefit, and they may also get like a regular Capers benefit in that, as an example.
Committee, do we have Representative Sweeley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alan, for being here today. So you said roughly about 19,000 Capers 3s would be eligible to go to Capers 2. Not just looking at retirement benefits, but on the aspect of Capers alone, what is the negatives and positives long-term for both plans? Changing almost 20,000 members, which would be a sixth of the total members we have, correct?
That's correct. Certainly, it's a higher benefit generally. I think most calculations would assume a higher benefit to those 20,000 individuals you'd move back to Capers 2. So that has that actuarial cost for the prior and then going forward. So higher benefit, higher cost for the Capers benefit. And then you get into the non-Capers area in terms of recruitment and retention. Does that help in that area as well?
Committee, any further questions on HB 2129? Coach?
Mr. Chair, thank you for being here again. So Capers 2, at one time, were truck drivers and janitors. They were all in Capers 2 as well.
That's right. All Capers members, state, local, school, everybody from 2009 to 2015 are members of Capers 2.
And just answering the question, I have 2 daughters that are counselors, but they were teachers at one time, so they had a certificate. And I don't think they would ever take anything off of the certificate to become a counselor. That would remain forever. So in most cases, they would have a teaching certificate.
I think so, and I think there's some language that we'd have to work with the Department of Ed to get that sort of certified list, and the school districts as well, in terms of who's actually meets that definition and who may not.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, Alan, you may continue.
Thank you. Then House Bill 2886 then looks just at Capers 3, and as I just mentioned, that interest crediting right now guaranteed 4%, and then if the trust fund's doing well, there's sharing dividends with the Capers 3 member that ultimately goes into their account if the trust fund's doing well. And on my testimony, of course, you can see that again, they pay in 6%. There's those employer pay credits. There's that little table there on the right-hand side of my first page of testimony, and you can see 1 to 4 years, 3%, 5 to 11, 4%, and then up to 24 plus years, and it gets to 6%. Again, KPERS 3, they never lose what they contribute. They're guaranteed at least 4%, and they are guaranteed a lifetime benefit from KPERS forward. This bill then just adjusts one of the dials in terms of the KPERS 3 benefit structure. On page 2 of the testimony, and it's the dividend interest crediting rate. And the current provision is 75% of the 5-year average return above 6%. And you can see in that table on the right-hand side, top right-hand side of page 2, that so each year the board does the calculation and determines whether or not additional dividend credit will be paid. And you can see over the first 9 years of the cash balance plan, the dividend credits applied 5 times of the 9, and you can see those years and the amount. And again, it's and there's an example there. So if it was 8% minus the 6 times 75 gets to a 1.5% return dividend credit for the members. And so if it was 8%. This bill then would just change sort of the calculation. It increases that dividend share from 75% to 80%, lowers the threshold from 6 to 5. So again, so it'd be 80% of the 5-year average return above 5%. So that example, if the return was 8%, so minus 5 times 80%, then that dividend credit would be 2.4% versus the 1.5% in the previous examples. Again, it's very situational, but we did an example based on a 30-year career member, their replacement ratio, trying to see how much of their final average salary they will earn in their retirement benefit through KPERS. This currently it would be 33% based on those assumptions. This would get it up to 36%, so it's a 3.33% increase. Again, in the example towards the bottom of page 2 of the testimony, final average salary is 60. Then again, the average salary, the benefit currently would be a little over $19,900. Under this provisions, it'd be about $21,900. So it's an increase of about $2,000 per year, or about 10%. And there's, in the attachment A, there's some examples of retirement replacement ratios based on how many years, career employee, early career, mid-career, and late career. In terms of the actuarial costs then for increasing, adjusting that dial, for the state school group, it would increase the unfunded liability by right at $100 million. Again, this could be paid up front, or it could be paid over 20 years amortized, and it'd be about $7.3 million annually based on the current payroll. So that'd be to address the unfunded liability part. For the future costs then, the normal cost, it would be about 0.35 on the employer contribution, which is about $20 million annually. And so in total, again, if you don't pay the unfunded liability part up front, the total cost then would be about 0.48% on the employer contribution, which is about $27 million total for the state school. And again, right now that state school amounts close to $700 million annually. Of course, it's less if you pay the unfunded actuarial liability up front. But this is one of the dials on KPERS 3. And of some of the different dials we sort of looked at, this one seems to move the needle the most in comparison to either paid credits or that amortization factor that's used when they get ready to retire.
Committee, do we have any questions on HB 2086? I've got a few, Alan. First, on the $102 million on the unfunded liability, can you explain, I guess, a little further on if we paid that up front, why we're going to still see such an increase in the real cost, basically, the normal cost?
Right. I think, again, I think it's where we are in terms of the current mix of employees and their years of service. So KPERS 3 has been in place for 10 years. So the unfunded liability payment covers those 10 years where this benefit formula was not in place.
So if I may, so this bill, if this went, we would go back and credit accounts for the previous 10 years. Is that what you're saying? And that's why you get that 102 million?
No, I'm sorry. It's just from this point going forward. And I misspoke it. Or that's my fault. It's just, but again, it's because those people that are KPERS 3 members, they're bringing their years of service and stuff towards that calculation. And so that's what gets you to that unfunded actuarial liability.
Okay. And then can you, I know you hinted on adding it to the unfunded liability, but let's talk percentage-wise. The unfunded liability, where are we at now as far as our funding ratio? And then if this was implemented and 102 was added to the unfunded liability, where does that take us down to?
Right. The funded ratio right now, assets, liabilities, state school group, we're right at 75%. And so this would, I'm trying, you can do a quick calculation. It would be a small, so you'd, of course, if everything else stayed the same, it would back that down. I know he's looking, I think
a number I saw was maybe 75.2 to 74.9. Does that sound?
It was, yeah, it was marginal, like 0.1% reduction.
And what we would get for that, you know, we'll say 0.3% reduction is on average about a 10% growth in KPERS 3 employee accounts, basically.
That benefit in that example, that's how much, based on those assumptions, the benefit went up 10%, about $2,000 annually.
Okay. Committee, do we have any further questions for Alan? Seeing none, thank you so much, Alan. All righty, we're going to turn to our proponents now. Like I said, we're hearing all three bills, so if the proponents want to come up, just kind of initially start off saying what they're speaking in favor of, which bill number, and then hold for questions, and we'll go from there. So first up, we have Representative Lynn Melton. Representative, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I sent a testimony through the system, but thank you for the opportunity to speak on House Bill 2130 in support of. I've been contacted by several constituents over the past couple of years asking me to bring this forward for consideration of having a choice of getting their payments monthly or bi-monthly. They've all stressed to me that with the rising cost of food, gasoline, and utilities, and even unexpected expenses, that this would be helpful. So I did a comparison from 2015 to 25, and I did it 2 weeks ago is what I gave you. So gasoline was $2.45 per gallon and currently $2.89. Eggs were $2.09 per dozen in 2015, and 2 weeks ago they were $6.11, and last Sunday I stopped on my way back to Topeka and they were $8.99. Bread was $1.44 a loaf and currently $2.92. Again, I stopped and looked and it was $3.79 in just a matter of a week or two. And milk was $2.45 a gallon, currently $5.38, but it's jumped to $5.79. And TV back 10 years ago was free for local channels, and it's at least $180 a month now. So as my constituents pointed out to me, we were able to pay our money in every 2 weeks. We should be able to receive our money every 2 weeks, or at least have that option. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Representative. Committee, do we have any questions for Representative Melton? Seeing none, thank you so much. Up next, we have Representative Robin Essex. Robin, welcome to the committee. You're speaking on HB 2129.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair Hoheisel, Vice Chair Steens, and Minority Ranking Member Shue, and committee. So glad to be here today. I so appreciate us having a KPERS Day because I think this is something we need to talk about, especially KPERS 3 and the challenges of those that have been in the profession for the last 10 years. I will add Chairman Hoheisel's question about, I was one of those people that had some KPERS 2, some KPERS 3, came and went in our public schools as various positions that I held. So until recently, I did have separate pools. So Anyway, I'm honored to speak in support of HB 2129. This bill is similar to the one that was introduced last session, so should be familiar to many of you. And it simply moves teachers currently in KPERS 3, certified teachers, KPERS 3 pension plan to the KPERS 2 plan. It rolls them in. This legislation is aimed at addressing the urgent challenges surrounding teacher recruitment and retention in Kansas. According to the Kansas State Board of Education, public school teaching vacancies reported for the fall of 2024 rose to 1,954 teachers, and that was from 1,810 the prior spring. So it continues to grow. A study by the National Center for Education Statistics found Kansas was second in the nation for teachers leaving the profession. Compensation and retirement is being reported as the top reason why teachers are leaving. These numbers reflect that it's time to do something. We need to take action to attract and retain qualified educators in our schools. These shortages not only affect the quality of our education and our students' overall well-being, it also results in larger class sizes, fewer class options, and teachers filling in outside their expertise. As highlighted in the recent post-audit report, and I highly recommend if you guys didn't read it, it came out last year, KPERS 3 offers lower benefits, longer retirement requirements, a longer vesting period, shared financial risk, and has higher employee contribution rates compared to other regional plans. This disparity is particularly troubling for long-term career educators, such as those exemplified in the Employee 1 scenario in that post-audit, who have dedicated their lives to education but are shortchanged the most under the KPERS 3 plan. A recent study by Bellwether Education Partners ranked Kansas 41st out of 50 states in teacher retirement programs for long-term or career teachers, while Missouri's public school retirement system was ranked 9th. This stark contrast underscores the urgent need for reform, especially for a border county like Johnson County. Several of you in here represent that area. Transitioning educators from KPERS 3 back to KPERS 2 would demonstrate a commitment to supporting our children's education and investing in the future of our schools. Providing teachers with the retirement benefits they deserve will not only attract new educators, but also retain experienced professionals who are essential to maintaining the quality of education in our state. I urge this committee to consider reforms to KPERS 3. I know you have a couple options, but this is a decisive step towards addressing these problems that we're facing. And I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
You, Representative, will hold you up there. Committee, do we have any questions for Representative Essex? Coach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, I agree with you 100%. But I also feel for those truck drivers because we have a shortage and they're going to look and say, what's the deal? So what do we say to the ones that don't get moved up?
That's a great question. The reason that we started with teachers is because it immediately affects so many of our families right here in Kansas. Our kids have to go to school, and they're faced with some tough situations where paras and people are filling in for spots in the day where they don't have a teacher to cover it. I am sympathetic to everybody that is on KPERS 3. In fact, if I was in charge of the budget, I'd move everybody. But teachers, particularly for the fiscal impact at first, we wanted to start with that because that seems to be the highest area of concern because we are losing teachers like crazy. So trying to fix a problem, and maybe this is more of a pilot type of thing to see, how much it costs long-term and how it works out, and hopefully others can join. So good question.
Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. I'm a little concerned about the word certified, and do you think that could create some confusion? And today, what is used as a certified teacher, and in the future, do you think some title changes could expand to be able to expand this group of pool?
Thank you for the question. So I was a public school employee for a while, and there was a definite difference between certified and classified. So paras and aides, they're definitely in the classified category. In fact, they go to separate trainings. It's totally a separate system that they're set up on. Certified teachers are licensed teachers, and it could be a counselor. It could be anybody that holds that teaching certificate from what I understand. So the separation there is clear, and I don't see any classified being all of a sudden certified. I hope that answered your question.
Cell phone is ringing. Dang it. I thought it was in there.
wanted
Something,
donuts.
candy. I was excited. We were going to get them. Any further questions for Representative Essex? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Representative.
Thank you.
Well, up next is my good friend, Tim Graham, KNEA. I am unsure, Tim, how you made this list, but here you are. Well, Tim, welcome to committee, sir.
There we go. As you heard, my name is Tim Graham. I work for the Kansas National Education Association, and we are the teachers union here in Kansas. We are here to testify. Yes, sir. We are here to testify in favor of both 2086 and 2129. I have included in my testimony a bunch of stuff that I presented to this committee back in the interim of 2023. I've put that in here for the new members of the committee and for those of you that were here 2 years ago, because a lot has happened since then. So I would encourage you to read that, but I'm not going to go through all of that in my testimony. What I told you back then, I think rings true to what I'll tell you right now, and that's in my first paragraph here that says there are two key issues directly related to 2129 and 2086 that appear to have widespread agreement within this body. First, that teacher shortages in Kansas are real, as well as the shortage of all Kansas public education positions. And second, KPERS Tier 3 is an inadequate retirement option for public servants in Kansas. HB 2129 would be a step in the right direction to address both issues, as would HB 2086. You will see in one of my testimonies that I talk about who we are, who we represent, and how we come to our policy positions. I would encourage you to read that. And you will see one of our policy positions is that Kansas NEA believes that Kansas Public Employees Retirement System should provide a retirement benefit of no less than 70% of the educational employee's final average salary, regardless of Social Security benefits. Now, from that perspective, 2086 falls far short, but we're not going to complain. We're just going to say something needs to be done. We fully understand the challenges of the legislative process and the realities of the budget process in this building and with this body. So we're not going to be an all or nothing, we're not going to take an all or nothing approach. We're going to ask you that if you do 2086, if you do adopt it, and if we can get this to the governor's desk, please don't let this be the final solution. Let it be just the first step. On 2129, the strong word of caution that we want to say is that Kansas NEA believes that no teacher in Kansas can fully perform their job without the support of education professionals such as school counselors, librarians, school nurses, paraprofessionals, and a whole host of other essential partners within the public education system. For that reason, we would testify with the hope and the request that if you guys work that bill and that bill ends up on the governor's desk, that somewhere in the process, the committee or the floor, if you will, would amend the bill to include all of these essential partners. In closing, I want to thank Representative Essex and Representative Williams again this year for introducing this bills and bringing this issue to the forefront once again. Again, there's widespread agreement that something needs to be done, but this issue keeps getting pushed to the bottom. I'm going to ask all of you that are advocates for this to apply a little more pressure to the powers that be to get something done this year. Last year, other issues hijacked this issue, and it made it very, very hard for the chairman and the chairman on the Senate side to really get anything done. You need to support him, please, and support each other in getting something done in Tier 3 this year. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Tim. Committee, do we have any questions for Tim? Vice Chair Steens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tim, for your presentation. this may be a loaded question, and this may be something that maybe Alan would answer, but, you know, as we've all been discussing here, it doesn't include the paras and the librarians, the PT, OTs, and other people that work in the schools as well to support the teachers. So the number, and I don't know what that is, in there, that sounds like a monumental kind of, I mean, a big move, right? To like move all those people to Capers 2. And I know we're just trying to do the first step. And so I'm just wondering how much that offsets the unfunded liability. Does that make sense?
Understood. And unfunded liability is a concern of ours as well. So just keep that in mind. There is a big cost. And I think I can answer your question and Coach Smith's question with the same answer, is that why one group and not the other group? We had an internal discussion about this, a very robust debate within our organization about whether to support 2129 because it leaves those people behind, right? Last year we were neutral with the same concerns on the identical bill. This year we are a proponent. We are supporting it. And I think what the conclusion that we've come to is nobody's going to get there without the first person getting there, right? So whether it's the ESPs, the educational support professionals that go first, whether it's state employees that go first, somebody has got to move out of Tier 3 to Tier 2 if that's what we're going to do. And of course, since we represent teachers, we're saying, hey, let's do the teachers. As far as the unfunded liability, again, we're concerned about that, but that probably is a better question for Alan. Thank you.
Committee, any further? Representative McDonald.
I really appreciated the distinction that Representative Essex made about classified versus certified people in a school district. And I know that's probably not in statute, but if there was some way we could expand the definition to create something new that would encompass those certified staff members, I would feel better about this legislation, both bills. So I don't know if that's a revisor question or something we just need to ponder.
Maybe something to ponder if this HB 2129 comes up. That might be something that we can ponder and do some wordsmithing. But I do echo those concerns of leaving folks behind. I know my daughter, you know, she's in public schools in Wichita, and she has autism. She's in SPED, and the most important person to her in that whole entire school is her para. And the amount of work that her para puts in with my daughter is amazing. So I want to make sure that when we're looking at these things, we remember those folks who really make the wheels turn as well. So, committee, do we have any further questions for Tim? Coach.
Mr. Chair, and Tim, thank you. You know, something about paras, I'm sometimes shocked what little money they make. And when they make such, you know, marginal income and then they get left behind on this, I think that's something that we need to look at. So thank you.
Agreed. And several of our members, our members of governance, our leadership agrees with you. Again, we are just trying to figure out a way of being in support of a good bill without throwing the whole thing out, but we understand. And another thing, just a plug real quick, a raise in the minimum wage could probably help a lot of those folks.
Any further questions? Do you want to throw a Medicaid expansion while you're there, Tim?
That was for harassing me when we came up.
Committee, do we have any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
All righty, up next we have Shannon Kimball with Kansas Association of School Boards. Shannon, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair and members of the committee. As the Chair said, I'm Shannon Kimball. I'm a government relations specialist with the Kansas Association of School Boards. I'm pleased to be here this morning to share our association's support for House Bill 2129. As many of you know, we are the membership association for school boards across Kansas. We have 285 school district members and represent over almost 2,800 locally elected school board members around the state. We have an inclusive legislative priority process that includes getting input from our members throughout a many-month-long process that culminates in our legislative priorities. And during that process this year, it came up at every meeting that we were at with our members and with superintendents and even some of our elected officials across the state, that making improvements to CAPERS for our teachers and support staff in our schools had to be one of our top priorities this year. It is, as Representative Essex did such a nice job of sharing, the shortage of teachers and support staff that we are experiencing in public schools is significant, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And one of the top things that our members told us would help with that would be to make improvements to the retirement system. So we are here specifically on 2129, although from the testimony around 2086, improvements to CAPERS 3 for our support staff would also be important as well. So I did want to just highlight that in Mr. Conroy's written information that he provided to the committee, he pointed out that CAPERS 3 actually has a perverse incentive on incentivizing staff to stay in our districts for a career as educators. You know, we want to develop highly qualified veteran teachers who will be in our classrooms over their careers, who can provide that high quality instruction for students over a lifetime, as well as who are then in the position to become talented district leaders as well. And the CAPERS 3 tends to have the best benefit for people who leave the earliest. So making changes, if moving teachers to Tier 2 and improving that lifetime benefit will be a great help to the work that our boards and our districts are using to try to retain the staff that we have and recruit new staff. We heard stories as we were going around the state from veteran educators who are being approached by young people going into the profession who are telling us that they have trouble recommending that teachers incoming teachers look at jobs in Kansas as opposed to looking at jobs in Missouri, for example, where the retirement benefits that they will accrue over a lifetime of their careers are going to be much better. So we appreciate every effort that you can make to address this issue this year, and happy to stand for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Committee, do we have any questions for Shannon? Coach, you got all the questions today.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you. You know, I hang around a lot of retired teachers, and they keep saying, Coach, we need a COLA, which I think is fine, but we can't have a COLA and we can't have 3 go to 2. It just, you know, it's not possible. So I told them it's probably not going to happen. And then the question I have, maybe a little bit off the subject, but if a kid finishes college with all the requirements to become a teacher, and then he can't pass that crazy test to get certified, he can't teach, and then he leaves and goes to another field and doesn't come back. I think that test ought to be looked at and say, hey, we don't have to, you're not tenured, so we can let you go after 2 years if you're not doing a good job, but you filled all the requirements to become a teacher. Does that make any sense what I'm saying?
Well, I appreciate the question, Representative, and I think that you know, there are a number of pathways that we have in Kansas for people to become licensed educators. There is the traditional pathway that you're describing, but for those students, there are some alternative licensure pathways that KSDE has continued to do work to expand. And so I think that there are growing options to make sure that we are recruiting highly qualified people into our classrooms and not putting up unnecessary barriers.
Yeah, we want highly qualified. I agree with you 100%. And but again, the school district has a chance not to keep them if they don't do a good job. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any further questions for Shannon? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, our last conferee proponent we have today is Mary Sinclair, Kansas Parent Teacher Association. I believe she's joining via WebEx. Mary, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Floor is yours.
I believe this is Kansas PTA. So I'm speaking here today on behalf of Kansas PTA. I believe we're new to this committee. So I just want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about us. We're a grassroots parent-teacher association made up of volunteer parents, grandparents, teachers, and others from across the state, really connected by our support for children, families, and schools. Kansas PTA is part of the National PTA Organization, which is the largest and oldest advocacy association in North America. We've been working with school communities for 125 years. I feel like I've been there for about 100 of them. With our roots are in the creation of kindergarten, hot lunch programs, juvenile justice system, arts and education, mandatory immunization, child labor laws. So Kansas PTA has been a partner in strengthening our support for children across the country and in Kansas. Most of my points are probably similar to what you've heard, so I'll just try to summarize. Kansas PTA is in support of this bill to shift our educators from KPERS 3 to KPERS 2. We would be in support of actually the same for all of those members of KPERS 3. One of our legislative priorities is the retention and recruitment of teachers and educational support staff. Thinking about the components that lead to retention, let me start with the return on investment. We know that teacher attrition is costly. It's about 150% of teacher salary. So in Kansas, if we can address the retention issue, we can save about $50 million a year in that teacher turnover, the cost of teacher turnover. Thinking about retention and what kind of our large body of educational research tells us, as well as what we're learning from the Emporia State University kind of longitudinal study looking at retention. We know that there are a number of factors that help keep our educators in the field. Compensation is a big one, to which this is a significant part, having that meaningful pension component and opportunity. Mentoring and teacher preparation are two other really strong components of retention. And we see that the mentoring piece, we need veteran teachers to serve as mentors. So we need to keep them so they can help other teachers stay and feel good. Strong preparation, positive experience in those first couple of years are really critical to that retention component. The other piece I think we've heard about is the impact that retention leads to positive impact on student learning. So the retention piece helps build our master teacher base. Our master teachers are more effective with our students. It builds that continuity and trust as a family. If we're going into our neighborhood school, we know who our educators are. Our kids get excited about those teachers. Kind of in their K through 7 or K through 6 years, they know and are excited about getting into that next teacher's classroom. And then another component is our building principles. Our district leadership at our educational leaders at the building and the district level are former teachers. We want to keep those teachers. We want to create those master teachers so they can go on and be principals and building leaders and strong administrators at the district level. The Kansas legislature, I think there was kind of a question too about compensation for our teachers and for our paras and whatnot. The Kansas legislature has made meaningful strides to boost recruitment of our educators, particularly through the restoration of general education funding under the Gannon Agreement. An investment in full funding for special education could allow districts to offer more competitive wages for our teachers and our para-educators who are kind of in that hyper-competitive post-pandemic climate. And we know this is, hitting all industries, not just education, but Kansas PTA is in full support of this KPERS program to kind of help with the retention component. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mary. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for joining us. All right, committee, we have several written proponents, so be sure to check that testimony out. We're going to move on to neutral. First up, we have Wendy Stark with the League of Kansas Municipalities. Wendy, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Wendy Stark with the League of Kansas Municipalities. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is that the League is a member-based organization as well. We have over 550 of our 625 cities that are members and around 40 counties. And the reason that I talk about this is because our members get together every year to put together our statement of municipal policy, and this is a member-driven policy. And one of the directives that our members have given to us at the League is, actually made this a legislative priority this year, is that the state should consider a rollback from KPERS 3 to KPERS 2 for municipal employees. As I said, I just wanted to bring that up, and as conferees have mentioned, the importance or the important role that teachers play in our communities, and we also want to emphasize the important role that our city employees play in communities. We are neutral on the overall position of whether teachers should be rolled back. We do understand that teachers are essential to our communities, and great teachers create good schools, which make strong communities. We want to highlight that this change should also be considered for our municipal employees, and that KPERS 3 does not offer the same important benefits KPERS 2 provides, and that loss has been detrimental to cities' retention and recruitment as well of long-term employees. Our municipal employees provide citizens with basic services from public safety operations to infrastructure services, such as those people who are, those lovely individuals who are out treating our roads right now today, as well as those that are providing our clean water in our communities, as well as so many other services we provide. With that, we appreciate your time and consideration. We're always available to provide any additional information, and we ask that when you consider 2129, you amend the bill to include municipal employees. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Wendy. Committee, do we have any questions for Wendy? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Jeff Piper, Administrator with the Kansas Peace Officers Association. Jeff, welcome to the committee, sir.
Not just the Kansas Police Officers Association, but also speaking on behalf of the Kansas Sheriff's Association, the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police. As the administrator for the Kansas Peace Officers Association, I come before you today facing a significant challenge. The matter at hand is how to address the shortcomings of KPERS Tier 3. More than half of the state and local employees covered under the regular KPERS system, including many law enforcement officers, are enrolled in Tier 3. Simply put, this plan is severely inadequate, offering little hope of a sustainable or even supplemental retirement of these dedicated employees. State employees, local employees serve the citizens of Kansas every day with dedication and commitment. While they do not enter public service expecting to become wealthy, they deserve a fair and secure retirement for their years of service. Unfortunately, KPERS Tier 3, implemented on January 1st, 2015, fails to provide this security. Unlike the defined benefit pension plans of KPERS 1 and 2, Tier 3 is a cash balance plan, making it difficult to predict retirement benefits with certainty due to the variable interest rates over an employee's career. A report from the Special Committee on State Employee and Board Members' Compensation dated November 29, 2022, highlights this issue. According to this report, a 20-year KPERS 2 member with a final average salary of $40,000 could expect an annual retirement benefit of $14,800. In stark contrast, a 20-year KPERS 3 member with an end-of-career salary at $60,000 would receive only $12,000 annually, a reduction of $2,800 per year despite a significant higher salary. Furthermore, none of these plans include a cost of living adjustment, even as living expenses continue to rise. Rather than improving retirement security, KPERS 3 has resulted in reduced benefits, leaving retirees financially vulnerable. To illustrate this issue in a more personal terms, my wife became a CAPERS member shortly after CAPERS 3 took effect in 2015. In 2013, as a full-time CAPERS employee, her gross annual income was $41,282.22, with the net take-home of $31,536.62, approximately $2,628 per month. According to her 2023 CAPERS statement, if she works until she's age 65 with 19 years of service, her estimated monthly retirement benefit will be just $602. I ask you, what incentive does she have to remain employed, knowing that after nearly 2 decades of service, she will receive only $602 per month in retirement? Thousands of other CAPERS 3 members across Kansas are grappling with this same question. This issue is particularly urgent for law enforcement agencies struggling to recruit and retain qualified, experienced officers. This challenge is even more pronounced in communities where officers and deputies are not covered under the KP&F system. If CAPERS Tier 3 is not reformed or replaced with a more viable plan, we will continue to face workforce shortages that jeopardize public safety and the well-being of our state. For these reasons, the Kansas Peace Officers Association, as well as the other 2 associations I mentioned, remain neutral on House Bill 2086 currently under consideration. While it represents a step in the right direction, it does not fully address the fundamental problem of the plan. If this is the extent of the discussion, we will continue to face recruitment and retention crisis. We urge you to take meaningful action to ensure a fair and sustainable retirement system for the Kansas public employees or local employees covered under CAPERS. And I thank you for your time and consideration. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Committee, do we have any questions for Jeff? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, it's all the in-person neutral we have today. We have some written neutral as well, so definitely check that out in the S Drive. And with that, we are going to close the hearings on HB 2130, 2129, and 2086. Committee, be on the lookout for our agenda for next week. I do intend on working HB 2186 next Wednesday, and we also have a couple of bill hearings. As for Monday, it's going to say call the chair. I have a scheduling conflict Monday. It keeps this time every year, that scheduling conflict keeps popping up. So we will not be having committee, even though it will say call the chair. But again, scheduling conflicts keep happening around this time. So we will not be here Monday. We will be back Wednesday. And with that, committee, we are adjourned.